but it's all one colossal a bad joke? I don't find that terribly intellectually persuasive, never did. But I know that for some, the issue of God is a very difficult one, and they may not have been as lucky as I in making peace with God's existence. I know very wonderful people who just find it almost impossible or impossible to believe in God. So I think that, and I feel for them, because it's a richer life, much richer life to believe that there is a good God who governs the universe. Not to mention comforting in the deepest sense. But I have no problem asking these questions, and for some there are no answers. And I guess I should repeat at every break the great Rabbi Milton Steinberg quote. For the believer in God has to account, it's a paraphrase, but this is basically what he said. The believer in God has to account for the existence of one thing, evil and suffering. The atheist has to account for the existence of everything else. Please do remember that. Okay, 1-8-Prager-776, and let's go to Litchfield Park, Arizona, and Aaron. Hello, Aaron. Dennis Prager.
Mr. Prager, good day to you. How are you?
Thank you.
Wonderful. Great honor to speak with you. I kind of view it as, we are God's children, obviously. I mean, I love my children enough to let them learn by their own suffering one way or another. I know it's a pretty simplistic view, but at the same time...
Yeah, but there is suffering you can't learn from. What if you're brain damaged by a drunk driver?
Well, I'm not talking about so much this life, but I mean, what's eternity compared to a lifetime of suffering, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so your answer to the problem of injustice in this world is the next world. So it's, by the way, it's mine as well. I did wasn't it? Yeah, I did. This was very recently. I had an Ultimate Issues Hour on heaven and hell, and I said if there is a good God, then there is reward and punishment after we die. It's axiomatic, because there is so little reward and punishment rightfully done in this world. I'm with you, Aaron. I agree entirely. Thank you very much. Denver, Colorado. Eric. Hello, Eric. Dennis Prager.
Hi, Dennis. I think cell phones may prove that there's a God.
Cell phones may prove there is a God, and how is that?
Away from you, and getting to talk to one of my favorite mentors.
Oh, that's very sweet.
Well, I had more to the subject. You know, the classical philosophical view I've been taught was rephrase the question a little different. Because God is all good, and because He's all powerful, then we are already living in the best of all worlds. That's the macro view I learned from you. The micro view, I think, is my world, just where, I mean, I've had things very tough. You know, I had $1 million estate stolen by my ex-wife. She beats my kids with a whip and electric cord, and it's been enormously tough. She's now trying to get me thrown in jail, and through all that difficulty, I've learned a ton.
You've learned what?
I've learned a ton. You know, I've learned more about myself. I've become maybe a person...
Yes, you have, but I'll comment on this learning from suffering when we come back. The Ultimate Issues Hour on the Dennis Prager Show. Amazing to me that I haven't addressed this on the Ultimate Issues Hour, and that is the issue of unjust suffering and evil and reconciling those with belief in a good God. It's called theodicy. It's the problem of, in a nutshell, the problem of evil. How do you believe in God? The last call, excellent one, and I thank you again, was for your kind comments, was about learning from suffering. Many people do, in fact, bring that up as one way of answering the problem, and there's a lot of truth to it. I would say to you that all the suffering of my life has been an educational experience. I have learned an immense amount from that suffering. And sometimes you meet people and you feel that they really haven't suffered, although it's pretty rare, and they don't seem to be terribly compassionate, or if not even compassionate, I should say empathetic. They may well have compassion for people who suffer, but not a lot of wisdom, or not a lot of maturity. I mean, suffering has its role. There's no question, but there is a form of suffering that you can't learn. There's nothing to be learned from. As I said, you're rendered brain damaged by a drunk driver, what is it that you're going to learn? You can't even learn because you're brain damaged. I mean, so it's not. We who believe in God can't give facile answers. I believe atheists give facile answers. Well, we don't know how it all came about, but science will tell us one day. Everything came about on its own. How do I know? I don't know, but I assume it. And that's facile to me. Now, the agnostic, the one who says, look, there are arguments on both sides, that's a separate issue. But the atheist? I don't like facile atheist answers, and I don't like facile theist answers. We who believe in God have to be intellectually honest. Make a lot more believers in God when we're intellectually honest than if we give cliched responses. Having said all that, I do not believe that suffering says there is no God. See, it might, to those of you who believe that God will protect you. Alan, we should put that down as one of these ultimate issues. Will you be protected if you do the right religious things, or believe the right religious things? I've never in my life believed that because I'm religious, or because I'm good to the extent that I'm a good person, whichever one or both, that I will be protected from cancer, or I will be protected from a drunk driver. I just never believed that. It's not the way God works. It's like a deal with God. You don't make deals with God. As Harold Kushner, the author of When Bad Things Happen to Good People, put it to me very well in one of the many dialogues we have had. And said, if a righteous man goes out in very cold weather without a coat on, he's just as likely to get pneumonia as an unrighteous man who goes out without a coat on. That's the way it works. That's the way of the world. All righty, and let's go to Charles in Los Angeles. Charles, Dennis Prager, thanks for calling.
Oh, Dennis, thank you. An example of unjust suffering is that you're only on the radio 3 hours a day.
Well, yeah, at a given point, it would be unjust suffering for me.
I would imagine. Well, now you mentioned earlier your first segment of the show about how you attribute evil acts to men, in the example of the Iraqi family getting blown up. But then you're also arguing that goodness, the goodness in the world, and the good acts that men do to others, to humanity, is attributable to God. So how do we reconcile that?
There was a breakup. Are you on a cell phone?
I am. I'm sorry.
That's okay. There were a few words. How do we reconcile the evil done by men with what?
Well, you attributed the blowing up the Iraqi.
Oh, I see. Okay. So when evil, I blame men. When nature does evil, I don't blame God.
Yes.
I see. Well, I do. I said earlier, there was an analogous question posed to me, and I absolutely do. God, you created a world where there will be metastasized cells called cancer. You created a world with tsunamis. You created a world with earthquakes, with the ability to have terrible plagues and the flu that will kill 25 million people at a time. And yes, absolutely. But why does that negate God's existence? That's why I have such a firm belief. I'm prepared to say, God, I really think you made a big boo-boo here. To which I then answer, Dennis, you're an idiot. You're telling God that he made a mistake? What the hell do you, Dennis, know compared to God? That's why I use the answer, Charles, about Job, where God says, come on, you don't know anything compared to me. But yes, I do. I absolutely attribute that stuff to God, Charles. You with me?
Yes, I'm here. So really what we have are two subsets of good as well as two subsets of evil. Those acts that are attributable to man and those acts that are attributable to God.
Yeah.
Would you break it down in that way?
Yeah, that's fine. Yes, exactly.
Okay. So then what we have, in fact, is the unjust or just suffering where there's the obvious cause and effect,